Welcome to the Smart Cities Conference. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Esteban León. I'm from UN Habitat. I'm from the City Resilience Program of UN Habitat, which is based here in Barcelona. It's an honor to be here and to have this session on resilient cities and smart cities. I would say there are not smart cities that are resilient, and most resilient cities should be smart. And that's the main idea of creating or building a city that can continue functionality, even having some shocks or stresses as part of the normal functioning of the city. I have the pleasure to be here with not only good colleagues but also good friends. I'm lucky because I know them all. So it's going to be a very easy conversation. I want to check first how many Spanish speakers do you have here, or I want to see if we do it in English or Spanish. So English speakers or people who speak English, raise hands please. You prefer English? Okay. Now, because we have a panel that is fluent in Spanish, so it could have been an opportunity. Perhaps the closing remarks will be no, in English. Let's do it in English. Okay, let me introduce people in the session. Here we have Ares Gabas. She's working at the Barcelona City Council. She has been a great ally of UN Habitat and the program. We've been working together for some time now, and they made possible UN Habitat to be present here in Barcelona. She's going to take the floor and she's going to introduce herself and then give a presentation. After that, we have Elizabeth, who's coming from the Generalitat of Catalonia, also a good ally or partner of UN Habitat, and we are very grateful for your presence here as well. Then we have Laia from Lobeya, which is one of our implementing partners, and we had really good experience, and I really think that you have to see the presentation and thinking how can we support cities with new technologies and predictability. And finally, we have Mohammed. He's coming from UCLG. This is the largest city association, and he's coming actually from Durban. They have their summit last week, so he's, I imagine, jet-lagged and tired, but he's going to make his presentation brilliantly as usual. So with this, I will just set the context. The idea of the session is to see how do we, with such advance, I mean, you see the premises here. You can see so much modern and new approaches and new technology, and innovative technologies and innovative approaches as well in the world. Yet we have most of the world living in difficult situations, and it's not news. I mean, you can see it. You have conflicts everywhere. You have disasters everywhere. You see how 1/3 of the global population is living in slums. It's shocking, but it is reality. We have a world that it's urbanizing and it's growing very, very quickly. You have a world that it's basically already transformed from 50% of the world's population to 60% of the world population living in cities. And clearly, cities are not advancing at the same speed as this new urbanization process. So basically, it's important to make sure that all this advance and all this technology support cities in order to build this intelligent, smart, and resilient city. So that's the main context of the session. And I think that it will be important to see the different perspectives. We have a city perspective, we have a regional perspective, we have a private mix and technology perspective, and then you have a city associations that it's basically listening at all the different contexts of different cities around the world. I think you have 24,000 cities, as members, so it's quite important. So without saying too much, I will pass the floor, and I hope that you enjoy it. After each speaker gives the presentation, we are going to have a small debate, some questions for them, and then I will open the floor for you to ask questions. So pay attention and make smart questions. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Esteban. I'm Ares Gabás. I'm the responsible of the Urban Resilience Department in Barcelona. Our resilience program started back in 2012. And I'm going to start the presentation with setting the stage on how we understand resilience and how we approach in our work. So for us, urban resilience is on the capacity of the city to prevent and minimize the impact of any type of risk we are exposed to in order to maintain the continuity of function. So for us, it is a process of continuous improvement that starts with the risk management that we make from the incidences, more or less critical, that happen in our public space or in our urban services. But then we also need to have capacity to analyze what's going on, to learn from what we have experienced in the past, but also to foresee what are the risks and how they are going to affect us and what is the capacity of response that we have to absorb these shocks and stresses. And in the end, with all this information, we are able to implement solutions and projects in order to reduce or eliminate these risks and vulnerabilities. This is to highlight that learning for us is very important. And technology and smart solutions are tools that are very useful, but are a support. So we need to know first what we need, what are our main shocks and stresses, so what are our problems, what are our needs, and also what are our resources, the resources we count on, and how we can maximize them and where we need to invest our money. So one of the first projects we had to implement, or we found the need to start developing, was this platform of information in order to know how the city is responding to shocks and stresses and how the city is performing in its services. First, we needed to be able to have this overall picture. So we contributed to the development of this platform, which is a knowledge improvement platform that gathers information on different city layers, on services, but also information on the territory, on the population, demographics, so that we can combine all this information and have a picture on how the city is responding, and also have this capacity of analyzing how it's going to respond also in the futures that we foresee, and the risk that we foresee for the future. This allows us to have statistics on how the cities are evolving, but also to localize where the problems are. Also, this is an example of the most critical incidences are highlighted in this picture. So being able to have them localized and with live information allowed for the center of operations that is in charge of those sort of incidents to improve their standard performances. So the incident stock went down, also the average resolution time. So having the information in time is really relevant. Also, we use this information to predict or to see how the city is going to respond to shocks or stresses, for instance, related with climate change. We have a climate plan in place, but in order to define the measures and the actions we needed to implement, the first thing we needed to know is how climate change is going to affect us. So we developed an analysis and a certain amount of maps on flooding risk, and also on how heat is going to, which is one of the main risks that we are already facing and will be increasing in the future, high temperatures. So being able to know how it affects us in the territory, also not only the exposure, but also combining it with different layers of vulnerability, such as where does the most vulnerable population live, where do we have the buildings that are less prepared to face extreme temperatures, where do we have more or less green, which has a thermoregulatory capacity. So all this information, which we also are compiling in this resilience atlas that we are sharing with all the organization, is what helped us define these objectives and the measures of the climate change plan. For instance, regarding the greening, one of the objectives is increasing by 1.5 square kilometers the green in the city. So we need to know Of course, in Barcelona, any opportunity to include green is welcome, but there are places that even need it more because they are more vulnerable to heat, for instance. Also, the program of shading the city. There are areas where it's priority to act. Same with buildings. We know that certain stock of buildings are less prepared to face extreme temperatures, so probably we need to start working with them, and so on. And another project that I wanted to highlight is one that is very brand new that we just started developing, and it has to do with increasing the knowledge that we have on how these impacts affect us. So we're developing this methodology to study how critical episodes impact our services. The aim of this is to better understand how these risks affect us, also being able to anticipate and prevent them when possible. Also, improving the management of the incidences and these critical episodes, and ultimately increasing the coordination with all the stakeholders that are involved within the city, the deployment of the city services. So it starts with when we detect an incidence of a certain degree of criticality, we study how this has an impact on the urban services with a very broad approach. I mean, it took a while to have this list, and it's a first version. It's probably we will evolve it. We have this overall picture of what a city. We understand the city as a service provider to the citizens. So what are the basic or the services that the city needs to provide? So we came up with this list, and the idea is that with this analysis and this methodology, we can have an insight on how a certain episode has impacted and to what degree, in order to learn and to have, from all this information, be able to come with improvement solutions and projects to implement as well. And ultimately, with all this intelligence and all this information that we are gathering with this methodology, be able, now we are studying the incidents after they have happened, but why not, if we can detect some patterns when we have a certain type of episode, we can define specific scenarios and know in advance when one sort of shock or stress is going to hit, what are the services that are most likely to be impacted by it, so that we can also act in anticipation. And with it, I'm going to finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Ares. Thank you, Ares. Can you hear me? Okay. No, it's impressive, the work that Barcelona has been doing, and it has been an inspiration for many cities. I must say, Barcelona adopted UN Habitat CRPP in 2013, and thanks to them, we managed to develop together a methodology that now it's going city by city and starting to expand and upscale. And it is important because it's not the same for us as UN, United Nations Habitat, to go to a city and try to support a city if we don't go hand by hand with another city that has been successful on this. So it's always a win-win situation. It's better to show something that has been proven correct than just arriving with a theory that may work or not. So we are grateful for Barcelona's support, and I think that it's impressive the work they have been doing. Thank you, Ares. We are going to pass now to the Generalitat of Catalonia, and please, if you can introduce yourself and then come with your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Elisabeth Doa, and I'm coming from the Generalitat of Catalonia. I'm an architect, and I'm not responsible for the agenda urbana of Catalonia, and also coordinating territorial and planning transversal actions. I would like to thank to the organization for the invitation. I think that it's a very interesting forum here that can allow us to share various issues related to territorial resilience in terms of opportunities and in terms also of existing deficiencies and vulnerabilities. Catalonia is subject, like other places, to the changes of globalization, although we can find some difference regarding to other countries where urbanization is occurring faster. But there are common challenges. First, we need to follow precautionary principle. By planning, we minimize economic, environmental, or human lives risks. Second, I think it's important that interdepartmental collaboration among administrations is fundamental in the change of information and the creation of multi-sectoral management tools. Another challenge is the incorporation of indicators in our management. Indicators are increasing, which help us to make more accurate planning, but also managing become more complex. And in the end, a territorial vision is necessary in planning and in acting in order to reach all population. In territorial and urban planning, we can do much about to avoid natural or technical disasters and to be more resilient. In flooding and urban planning, we have our urban planning law. This restricts new settlements or constructions in flood areas, although we cannot remove the pre-existing ones. And we have developed a protocol of action also in campings located in floodable areas. We involve different departments and institutions like tourism, civil protection, the Catalan Water Agency, and the Secretary of Environment and Territoriality. The main goal is to minimize the risk of facilities located in floodable areas. We must remember that we had an episode in 2013. Flooding caused many problems in campings in the Pyrenees, in the Vall d'Aran. In coastline management, we can find some risks in relation to coastal regression as a result of climate change. The third report of climate change in Catalonia tells us that in 2060, 140 kilometers of beaches in Catalonia will be vulnerable to the effect of the storms, compared to the current 61 kilometers. But in new century, level of the sea will have risen between 90 and 180 centimeters. Now the erosion of the beaches is an average of 90 centimeters per year in Catalonia. So we expect some problems in beaches and coastal municipalities. How to deal with these impacts? Interventions must always incorporate minimizations of exposure and vulnerability to the impacts of climate change and reduce the consequences associated with external events. Since the coast is a very sensitive element, we must put forward prevention measures for new facilities to be installed in our beaches, as well as measures to adapt the existing ones. To move on, we need a legislative base. We have adopted now the law of coastal management, but we also need a planning base that we are now elaborating the coastal management plan and derived actions plans. We have now a specific strategy for the Maresma and for the Delta del Ebro. And financing. This depends on the contribution, in the case of Catalonia, of the state. Today, information and alert systems are the keys to do a preventive risk management. A way to prevent and mitigate risk is having access to the information and to know what is happening. This can be achieved with sensorization. We need data in real time to know how systems are behaving and how about infrastructures. We are moving towards scenarios linked to climate changes that surpass what is ordinary. Parameters we are used to now are changing. These anomalies and new phenomena are unimaginable with usual tools. And it is why we are forced to endow ourselves with new ones. So we have developed an information system for the planning here in Catalonia. It's the Territorial Observatory. We do risk analysis from seveso, flood, slope that have consequences in urban and territorial planning. We need an historic and a far-sighted vision in the management of risk in urban habitats. Beyond risks and problems is which we have acted until now, as a flood. There are other current transformation processes that are very deserved and that they are already impacting in the areas that we are live in our way and impacting in our way of life. And we will have more impacts in the future, like environment transformation processes. We talk about climate changes, inherent island efficiency, also technological transformations processes, robotization, is destroying now a lot of mechanical jobs, but it also generates new opportunities with new professions. Some of these professions contain potential solutions or improvements for disaster management, but do not reach everyone as well. And not everyone has the same level to access to them. Energy transformation processes also, automobile electrification, we find again an imbalance among which part of the society will be able to do a process of transformation towards more sustainable models. Global agendas urge to promote kind of actions with a broader and less compartmentalized focus. Taking into account the variables that are interacting, like physical form of urban fabric, relationship with the environment, habitability, social cohesion, health, economic productivity, ecosystem service, mobility, etc. Taking care also of the multiple scales where these interactions occurs: territory, urban fabrics, public spaces, and housing. And we need a vision of future. The Urban Agenda of Catalonia takes in account the current impacts, difficulties access of housing, problems of mobility, etc., and future impacts, technology, revolution, changes in energy models, new environmental impacts, etc. We must be proactive before reality goes ahead. If we face these challenges, we will more resilience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth. I think it's very important she raised very important points. One is the global agreements and how to achieve the global agreements. We're working basically on 4 main global agreements. One are the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And these are the kind of umbrella agreements. And we have a deadline for that. We put a deadline of 2030. By 2030, we should deliver the commitments and the goals of the sustainable development. I'm skeptical on this, but that's the target. And basically, if we don't achieve that, that means that we will keep carrying some log behind. And it's complicated. It's something that we all as nations have committed to do. The other is the Paris Agreement for climate change. That one I'm sure that you hear lately much more. We have a climate summit in New York a couple of months ago, and that's another of the large agreements that we have to tackle, and it's not an easy one. And I think that those are the kind of challenges that Elizabeth was mentioning, are quite critical. And if we think and we combine climate change and other challenges with a large urban population, and you mix these, then you may have some severe problems. Then you also have the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is another framework or agreement that our nations have signed. And this also expires in 2030. We have goals for 2030 for Sendai and SDGs. And finally, we have the new urban agenda that we launched in 2015, 16. 2016 in Quito, Ecuador. And that tries to give a bit of a framework on how municipalities and cities should work. And it has 5 interesting components. One is national policies, the other is urban planning or city planning, urban financing, urban governance, and localizing all these efforts into a region. So, I mean, the frameworks are there, but how do we achieve them are the challenge. With that, I'm going to pass to Laia because she will give you some lights on the climate part, and I think that these are very important. And I must say, when we were presenting this in cities, they were really welcoming, and they were really happy to see that we can do something and we can predict something. Laia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Esteban. I will talk a bit about what satellite observations can do for smart cities. First, at a local level with an air quality example, and then we will move to the global level, which is pretty much the work that Esteban was mentioning just now. I want to draw your attention to satellite observations. This year has been an important year in this field because for the first time ever, I think the global community has realized that satellite observations are neutral. Sorry. Here. Are neutral information about what is happening on a given place. This summer in the Amazonas, we had a lot of fires going on. There was a lot of denial by administrations about those fires happening, and satellite observations showed, and here you can see a fire just a few hours before it happened and a few hours after it occurred, how this was really happening. So no denial was possible. This is an important point for everything Lobelia does, to show that satellites are sources of information and data that everybody can use. And many of them, most of them actually, the bigger missions, are free of use and open for everybody. I want to show you the example of a continuous air quality monitoring tool that we implemented in different cities, in cities that are rich in technology and in action and in sensors. This is the example of the city of Barcelona. The first image that you see here is of the Tropomi instrument, a satellite that flies over the Earth every day. Wait a minute. Oops. I cannot play the video, but that flies over the Earth every day and provides observations of NO2, which is an important pollutant to human health. So taking this data and knowing that in different cities this NO2 is different, that we are exposed to different concentrations of NO2, we tried to fill in the gaps of what a city like Barcelona has as an air quality monitoring. So far, there's only this number of observations in the city, which are around 15, and this is in a city with a lot of observations, and no information at an hourly level of what is happening at street level. So we fill in the gaps with information such as those of satellites and create something like this. You can see here an animation. No?
He's coming to help you.
He come to help me. Can you play it for me?
Has tocado algo y se ha ido todo. Todo es que se ha ido negro la pantalla.
Has perdido el reloj también, ¿no?
Ya está.
Está bien.
Quita el keyframe, quítalo.
No, está bien. No, a él le decía.
Pero ¿cómo puedo darle al play?
Ya está.
Is it moving? Yes. This is an animation of what happens with air quality in Barcelona on a given day last year. This is a reanalysis data set that is free of use and open for everybody. Here you can see how at the beginning of the day and after a few hours when the transit starts, the city gets polluted more and more, and it doesn't happen in the same way every day. Even weekly days, because it depends on meteorological factors, on different scenarios that are occurring at a city that makes every street more or less polluted. Some people are using this data to track, for instance, the most polluted schools in our city, and to track, for instance, how we are surpassing the limits, the legal limits of pollution in our cities. This is an easy way to understand how satellite observations can help at a city level with smart technology. If we move on, this is free and open, and you can access it later. I want to move to the vulnerability to climate emergency that Elizabeth was talking about in her talk. One of the most important things right now is diagnosis. Every city should know where they are standing at in terms of climate emergency. What is coming for them? Are they on the coast? Are they close to the equator? Are they... What is very likely to happen in this city? Science knows a lot already about that. And we have a lot of evidence of past experience and very good projections that we keep adjusting every year to know what will happen. What I will show you now, and it doesn't work because it's a video, but you can see this is also an open platform where you can click anywhere in the world and check in every single city what are the climate trends for the last 50 years. This sort of information comes in super handy when we talk to countries that are not rich in sensors, rich in information, or rich in technology. There is information all over the world that can be used to address the climate emergency. We use this information with the CRPP from the Urban Resilience Program here in Barcelona by UN Habitat, where they use this information to address specific actions at a city level. So we work with urban planners, with architects, with people working at the municipalities hand by hand, like Esteban was mentioning before. And I'm very glad to see many faces here that are conducting this work, and they use this as an input, as one more input to understand the status of the city, the profile of the city in this climate emergency. And not only, resilience go even farther than climate. They cover more aspects of it. This is some of the outputs of this exercise, where you can see 2 example cities, what happens before and after a certain period, and where we understand the extreme events that are likely to cause extreme situations at a city level and that need to be addressed. And this is another example. We go back to Catalonia in this case. Taking into account this sort of information, we can even address the economic impact of the climate emergency, which is always a very good trigger to behavioral change. How much is infrastructure damage, or the risk of damage, the vulnerability of infrastructure, how much is this in Catalonia, at a city, at a regional, at a country level? So I want to finish with this slide. I hope you liked it, and that's it.
Thanks, Laia. I think it's important. Thank you for this. Seriously, I think it's important to switch. What's the context? We have, as UN Habitat at least, we initiated work in 2005 with all this disaster, humanitarian, and risk reduction and prevention. Globally. And we recognized that we were actually running after disasters and conflicts. And we were just trying to put solutions to things that were happening already. And that's the whole rationale of the work that we are doing now. which is why run after the disaster or the conflict or the crisis in general, and why not go in front of it and try to do something? And how do you do that? The only way to do it is to have information and to take evidence-based decisions. And that's the whole rationale of the program, and that's the whole rationale of this work that we are doing. It's to advance ourselves into a position in which we can predict what may happen and we can avoid what can happen in any given situation in a city. Especially knowing that we have these challenges, that we have these vulnerabilities, that we have these cities that are highly vulnerable, and that we have more challenges coming. So I think that it's just common sense to start anticipating ourselves into something that may happen. With that, I want to pass the floor to Mohamed. And as I said, this is one of the largest associations of cities. And I think it's very important because if you don't listen at what local authorities and governments, local governments want to say, it's very difficult to contextualize solutions for them. And I must say, in the global architecture, we have a bit of a failure because we have a disconnection between national and local level. And you can see their commitments are at the national level, yet implementation is at the local level. So if they don't talk each other, we are going to have a serious problem. Mohamed, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Esteban, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this gathering. I want to start from the last point you have mentioned, that the gap between national and local actors. We at UCLG, we are trying on all the agendas, that international agendas, to fill this gap and to install a kind of public or a dialogue between local authorities and the national government. I mean, we want to be only implementers. We want also to have this dialogue to decide and to design the solution that we are looking for the agenda. You have mentioned these global agendas, the new urban agenda, the climate agenda, the 2030 agenda also, the global compact on migration, which is affected also by climate change. In all these agendas, local authorities are, let's say, involved, and more than that, they have responsibility, and they play a very prominent role in implementing this agenda. As I said, we need to be also part of those who are designing the process and design the solutions.
Something happened with the laptop. I don't know what happened.
Okay. Okay, I was saying that we want to be a part of the elaboration of strategies. I mean, we cannot be just implementers, but we want to be also at the table of discussion. And this is not at the national level, but also at the international level with the international community. For us, the framework on resilience and disaster risk reduction is Sendai framework. And we have been in 2015, when it was adopted by the majority of member states of the UN, we have been, we have been involved in the conceptualization of this Sendai framework. Let me just remember what is Sendai framework for local authorities. And there are 4 components for us in this framework. The first one for local authorities is to understand what is the risk. So you have to understand what's happened in your territory to adapt your strategy. The second one is to strengthen disaster risk governance, to have teams in your local authorities that are dealing with risk, that understanding risk, and to elaborate a strategy to reduce the risk of disaster. The third component is investment, is investing in disaster risk reduction. for resilience also. And the fourth one is enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response to the disaster. We have been accompanying since a long time local authorities since 2008 to elaborate at the local level a strategy for disaster risk reduction. Just for the component which is for us very important, strengthen disaster risk governance, it means that local government adopting and implementing local disaster risk reduction, promoting the revision of documents, because we have to think that disaster risk and resilience should be also elaborate within the urban planning of the city. So we cannot think just about economy, we cannot just about poverty, but we have to have a holistic approach of disaster risk and resilience in the city. Also supporting the implementation of, we have elaborated a few years ago what we called with the UNDRR, what we call the resilience campaign, and with a checklist that cities are adopting, we call it the 10 checklist. And in this checklist, the local authority, they can choose 1, 2, or 3, 4 components of this campaign, and they implement to putting this in their territory. Well, we have in UCLG also a very strong component on learning. So I want to share my time with my colleague Rafael to present very quickly what is this component. We are working with local authorities in Latin America, in Africa, and also in Asia Pacific. We have been with the mayor of Iriga, which is from the Philippines, and she was saying that every 2 weeks there is a problem, a typhoon in her city. Every 2 weeks. Can you imagine a city you live in with this kind of problems in the city? So the main strategy that she has to elaborate is to reduce the risk and to reduce the impact of disaster risk in her territory. So this is all I want to say about the strategy of UCLG, but we are, as I said, we are committed to many of these global agendas. I spoke in the beginning about the global compact on migration and refugees. People are moving from one place to another, also because of climate change impact. So we have to think, for us, we try to have a holistic approach and to see all these problems that local authorities are facing. So can I pass the floor, with your permission, to Rafael to present quickly yeah. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mohamed. So maybe in addition, just 1 more minute, what my colleague Mohamed has been sharing already. I think he is stressing in his speech very much that local governments must be at the heart of disaster risk reduction, of resilience. It is at the local level, in cities, where the service is delivered who makes cities resilient, where we can increase the resilience of our cities. And this correlates very much to the work we have been doing in UCLG on learning and cooperation. So in UCLG we have a long tradition on fostering learning within our members, fostering learning within our cities, facilitating exchange and cooperation on a decentralized level. And this also goes for resilience and disaster risk reduction. So for example, we have a very interesting project together with our colleagues from UN Habitat who are sitting here on this panel, where we try to make their resilience profiling tool accessible to all our membership. We have been starting on a pilot project in Costa Rica, for example, and we're now trying to also collect, with this knowledge we create there, a learning model, where we try to deliver some kind of guidebook for cities, for local governments and for regional governments, to trigger more local action and cooperation and learning experiences in between cities, to increase the resilience by learning from each other on a decentralized level. And we are very much committed from the work in UCLG at our Secretariat to support this learning experience on a global level and to foster our members, to become more resilient and to better manage disaster risk. So I think that's all, just a small addition to the presentation of my colleague. And I think later in the discussion we might be able to come back to this point of learning and cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a tight team. Joint presentations. Well, thanks. I think it's important. And I just, because I like give examples and analogies. Imagine a country where they accept a number of refugees, yet these refugees don't arrive to a country called country, they arrive to a place called city. So basically, you know, if you don't take a decision informed by your cities, it will be very difficult for you to take a decision on how to do you apply that at a local level. So thanks for that. Thanks for your presentations. I will switch. I will try to open the floor. If you have any questions now, please raise your hand. And if you don't, I will be the one asking some questions. So any questions from the floor? Don't be shy. Please, if you can come here in front and take the podium and ask your question. You are famous for...
So thank you all for your time. I'm studying here in Barcelona, a program on urban resiliency, actually with UN Habitat in some ways, with Lorenzo Kellery. And so we're right now looking at how cities addressing the climate emergency can be prioritizing their actions, what indicators and assessment tools we can be using in order to look at prioritization of the multitude of factors you can be using to address not only in mitigation and looking at reducing carbon emissions, but also in larger adaptation practices for addressing resiliency. So it's kind of a loaded question, but it is something that we're doing this week. And so if I could pick your brains and think of any advice for or indicators or frameworks for how to prioritize actions, that'd be great.
Your name is?
Oh, my name is Melissa Beaudry.
Melissa.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have someone you are asking specific or?
Not really.
general.
So yeah, I would leave that open and if anyone has any some burning ideas. So thank you.
Somebody wants to take this question. Mohammed, you are brave.
No, I think it's not an easy task. So what we are doing at our level as a worldwide organization of local authorities is trying to work with what we call our regional section. And the main instrument we have is the exchange and cooperation between local authorities. Some local authorities in the north, they have the knowledge, they have the capacities, they have these kind of things to face the resilience and disaster risk. And what we call learning, what Rafael was explaining, learning is meaning also learning from each other. This is one of the components. The second one is, and we are working also with UN Habitat and UNDRR, United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction agencies, because they have the knowledge also. And we are trying sometimes to plan some, let's say, regional activities, workshop, training of trainers to help cities to elaborate their strategy on resilience and disaster risk reduction.
Thank you, Mohammed. I will also try to respond to your question. I think it's important to separate because when we talk generically about assessments, it's a bit complex because you have many different assessments. So you have capacity assessment, you have a needs assessment, you have assessment is just an assessment, but you have different sources of assessment. So you will have to check what do you want, what type of assessment you want for what specific case. For example, for disaster risk reduction and resilience, probably what you want to assess is capacities, and capacities to respond, capacities to increase, and capacities to reduce vulnerabilities. But if you go to the other part of disaster response and humanitarian response, then you will be looking for more needs assessments and more structural assessments and see how are you be able to respond. So it's quite complex, but you have many tools there. The problem is that you have more tools and not very organized, and I agree with that. I mean, at some point, many years ago, I tried to do what I call a portal where we started collecting all different types of assessments. And at the beginning, we received so many and different ideas that we couldn't really organize them until we put just one criteria, which was an assessment that has been applied at least once successfully. And then we reduce completely. And that gives you an idea of how challenging is this area of analysis and assessment. And that tells you that how important it is actually to have information. So we have 9 more minutes. If you have any questions from the floor, raise it now. If not, I will ask some quick questions to the panel. So I will ask some quick questions to the panel. And then after that, we will try to wrap up and we have some information. So I will target Ares. You are next to me. What was the largest challenge you encountered, and how do you think that you can actually modify what you have done to other contexts? I will give you mine, but
So actually our work in resilience started after a series of crises we had in the urban services back in 2007 and 2008. And well, you can also see crisis as an opportunity, and for us it was. And also raising this awareness of vulnerability in order to do something about it. And this is what we try to do and how we try to incorporate this risk management approach to the processes of managing, operating, planning, and transforming the city. So in the beginning, the main challenges were on this side, urban services provision. And currently, I would say they're more on natural hazards and climate change. Actually, we're in nowadays we're in the process of writing down a climate emergency declaration and conducting a participatory process with the citizenship in order to create a program which is also integrated with the climate plan, but a program on urgent measures to face climate change. So I would say this is also a process that can be exported to other cities, because many cities are facing the same challenges as we are, and of course it is something that is exportable to them. And on the other hand, something that we are also struggling with is on how to measure resilience in a social dimension, because social cohesion is really important. It has nothing to do how a city responds when the society is cohesive than if it's not. And it's something that we are starting, it's a line of work that we are now starting to develop. So I would say this is the main challenges we have now.
thank you. Thank you very much. I have a question for you, Mohamed, now. What would you say are the priorities for developing cities? Is it technological, the challenge? Is it, what's the challenge that some developing cities have?
Well, first of all, it's the political will. I think before the technology and all these new techniques for developing cities. But from our perspective, the most important thing is to have what we have been saying before, this kind of dialogue and building a coalition with local authorities. Local authorities at the center, with the national government, with other stakeholders like NGO, the university. I think this is the best approach we can have in a city, to have this coalition around local authorities with all the forces that you have in urban cities. I mean, for us, one of the most important things is the local economic development. And we have a kind of a motto, which is also the UN, leaving no one behind. In a city, all the people should be included, and the approach is also inclusion of all the population in your city, so offering all the services to people, whether they are poor or young or old people. You have to have a strategy to respond to the needs of your citizens in your territory. Then technology approach is depending on the resources you have in your city. It depending on how powerful you are. So this is, I mean, there is no one unique solution. There are many solutions to develop cities and local authorities in their territory. I think one of the best examples we have is the city of Barcelona, having a global approach of the urban planning and the development of the city. This is a good example, and I think that the city of Barcelona is sharing this approach with many other cities. For example, one thing that the city of Barcelona is doing on the inclusion of migrants, on inclusion of refugees, this is a very good example that we can have. So, technology or not technology, depending also on the resources you have.
Thank you, Mohammed. We are running out of time, so very quickly, last question for each of you, Laila and Elizabeth. What are the challenges you encounter? If you can be very brief, that will be really appreciated.
I should say that the new challenges for us is to collaborate with among other administrations and other countries to develop new strategies, to exchange information and to increase multi-sectoral management tools also. Incorporate also, as I told you, indicators in our management to follow and to make work together. No, it is important for us that we need universal indicators. For apply for a urban fabric or on matter, not either the size or integration in metropolitan areas or territories. We need to get deeper into experience of agreements, of exchange and transfer of knowledge and experiences within territories. And so the technological generation communications among people is very important, and to take account to apply for new and develop more in the communication among administrations and citizens and vice versa. And so the three challenges I suggest is planning and minimize economic environment of human lives risks, collaboration with the institutions, and incorporate these indicators in our planning in the initial process. Thank you.
Elizabeth. I think we have 2 minutes and we have an important announcement. Laia, I will ask the question later on. And let me do an announcement and pass the floor to Abu Dhabi, since we are organizing the World Urban Forum in February next year. And it's a very important forum of local authorities, essentially, and partners of UN Habitat. Abu Dhabi, would you like to take the floor and say some words? We have 1.41 seconds. 1 minute and 41 seconds. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Hamda Shabsi, Director Media Affairs of Department of Municipality and Transportation in Abu Dhabi. If you allowed me, I will just want you to play video talking about, before I start my speech, talking about Abu Dhabi and World Urban Forum in 10th edition. So they should play the video.
10th World Urban Forum will exceed expectations. This will reinforce Abu Dhabi as a vital government, innovative and educational hub in the Middle East that encourages and promotes the implementation of sustainable development targets. We look forward to welcoming you to Abu Dhabi, the capital city of the United Arab Emirates, 10th session of the World Urban Forum. Thank you very much.
أبو ظبي، حيث كانت صحراء، أصبحت اليوم بيئة عمرانية نابضة بالحياة، تساهم بتنمية أفضل للمجتمع. الاستدامة الاقتصادية، الاستدامة البيئية، والاستدامة الثقافية. بهذه المحاور الأربع يبنى مستقبل أبو ظبي العمراني. الاستدامة نهج يتناغم فيه أسلوب حياتنا مع ثقافتنا وبيئتنا، ويمكننا من الحفاظ على مواردنا للأجيال القادمة.
We are out of time.
Thank you for inviting me here today. It's an honor for Abu Dhabi World Urban Forum delegate to be here with you all to experience and participate in the Smart City Expo World Congress. Events such as the Smart City Expo World Congress and World Urban Forum create an ideal platform to bring key stakeholders together to influence and shape the future of sustainable urbanization, which help in creating effective, long-lasting and valuable partnership that deliver real estate change and progress. For the first time in the Arab country, Abu Dhabi will host the prestigious World Urban Forum in the 10th edition from the 8th to 13th of February 2020 in partnership with the UN Habitat. WOFTIN will be an opportunity of thousands of delegates who are involved in all aspects of urbanization to share best practice and knowledge in how cities are built, planned, and managed both currently and in the future. Abu Dhabi will welcome more than 25,000 visitors from more than 150 countries to the World Urban Forum, with attendees to include heads of state, ministers, urban expertise, planners, and the general public. The forum will provide an ideal platform for collaboration and engagement between both the government and diverse private sector partners. WOFTIN will provide significant opportunity for Abu Dhabi and the region to showcase our progress in promoting and implementing sustainable urban development. It will further our progress toward the sustainable urban development goals and ensure the Arab region voice heard in the global stage, while fostering productive dialogue in innovation and cultural exchange. The theme of WOFTIN is Cities of Opportunities, connecting culture and innovation. At the forum, we will demonstrate the Arab cities are experimenting with innovative approaches and have achieved solutions to some of our toughest challenges. We look forward to welcoming you all to 10th World Urban Forum in February 2020. Come to Abu Dhabi and be inspired. أهلا وسهلا بكم في أبو ظبي.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. Thank you, Abu Dhabi. Thank you for participating, and thanks for coming here.